I never thought I'd be the kind of person who ends up in a hospital because of exhaustion. You hear about it sometimes, people collapsing at work, heart attacks in their 40 seconds or 50 seconds, strokes that come out of nowhere, and you always think, that won't be me, because you're strong, because you can handle it, because you've been tired before and kept going. That's exactly what I thought too. It was a Tuesday morning, just another day, same office, same coffee, same to-do list that never seemed to end. I'd been up late the night before, like always, answering emails until my vision blurred, slept maybe 4 hours, woke up, showered, pretended I felt fine. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, started scrolling through messages, and then out of nowhere the room started spinning. Not just lightheadedness, full, uncontrollable spinning. The screen in front of me blurred together. My heartbeat started pounding in my ears. I could hear it, loud and uneven. My chest tightened, my breathing went shallow. It felt like someone had put their full weight on top of me. At first, I thought maybe I just needed to eat something, or drink water, or get some air. But when I stood up, my legs didn't work. I stumbled, caught myself on the edge of the desk, tried to take a breath and couldn't. My fingers were shaking so violently I couldn't even unlock my phone. I tried to call for help, but my voice wouldn't come out right. The words slurred, like I was drunk or underwater. The last thing I remember clearly is staring at my phone screen, watching it blur until I couldn't see anything at all. My assistant found me maybe 10 minutes later. I remember her voice panicked, shouting my name, then sirens, then lights, then voices asking questions I couldn't answer. My blood pressure was 180 over 120. My pulse was erratic. One of the paramedics said quietly, "His body's shutting down from stress." Those words didn't even make sense to me at first. I didn't understand how stress, something I thought was just mental, could actually do this to my body. But I was about to find out. They wheeled me into the emergency room, and everything felt like it was happening in slow motion. The bright lights, the machines, the sound of people talking, it all felt distant, like I was watching someone else's life from far away. I remember one doctor leaning over me and saying, "You're lucky you didn't have a heart attack." Lucky. That word hit me harder than the pain, because luck shouldn't be the reason you're still alive. They ran tests, blood work, ECGs, brain scans, everything. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling tiles, feeling this wave of shame wash over me. I wasn't here because of some random illness. I was here because of the way I'd been living. Because I'd been running my body like a machine that never gets turned off. The doctor came back after a while and told me, "Your cortisol levels are through the roof. You're severely dehydrated, malnourished, and on the verge of physical collapse." She asked when the last time was that I'd had a full night's sleep. I couldn't remember. She asked what I'd eaten that day. I told her coffee. She shook her head and said, "Your body's been in survival mode for months. You just didn't listen." And she was right. I didn't listen. Because I didn't think the rules applied to me. I'd spent years convincing myself that hard work was a kind of armor, that if I just pushed harder, longer, faster, I'd earn my way past exhaustion. But sitting there in that hospital bed, hooked up to IV fluids, my chest still tight and my hands still trembling, I realized how wrong I'd been. You can't outwork biology. You can't negotiate with the human body. They kept me in the hospital for 3 days. 3 long, quiet, uncomfortable days that felt like an eternity. The first night, I couldn't sleep even though I was exhausted. I kept thinking about everything I wasn't doing, the meetings I was missing, the emails piling up, the people waiting for answers. Every few minutes, I'd reach for my phone. The nurse had already taken it away. "You're not doing any work while you're here," she said. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell her that I didn't have a choice, that things depended on me. But I didn't, because deep down, I knew she was right. So I just lay there, listening to the steady beeping of the monitor beside me, feeling the cold IV drip into my arm, and realizing that for the first time in years, there was nothing I could do except rest. The stillness was unbearable at first. When you've spent years moving at 100 miles an hour, silence feels like punishment. But somewhere between those endless hours of stillness, I started to notice something. My mind, which had been buzzing like static for so long, started to quiet down. I started to actually think. Not about work, not about deadlines, about life, about time, about what I'd been missing while I was busy being busy. I thought about dinners I skipped, vacations I canceled, people I love who I'd barely seen. I thought about how many times I'd said, "I'll slow down later," and I realized something terrifying. Later never comes unless you make it come. On my second day there, I started talking to other patients. There was an older man in the bed across from mine. He'd had a mild heart attack 2 days earlier, 62 years old, accountant. He told me he'd been working 12-hour days for years. He said the same thing I'd been telling myself, "I'll rest when things calm down." He smiled sadly and said, "Things never calm down, you just get older." That sentence hit me like a hammer. Later, a nurse came by. She'd been working in cardiac care for 2 decades. I asked her how many patients she saw like us. She said, "Most of them. The majority are people who thought they could push just a little longer. People who thought their stress was a sign of strength." She said something I'll never forget. "Your body doesn't care how ambitious you are. It only cares that you keep ignoring it." Every person I spoke to had a story like that, of ignoring warning signs, of waiting too long, of thinking they were fine until they weren't. By the third day, I'd stopped trying to check emails. I stopped pretending I was going back to normal right away. Instead, I just listened. To people, to my own thoughts, to the silence that used to scare me, and for the first time in a very long time, I started to feel alive again. Leaving the hospital didn't feel like a victory. It felt like stepping into a world I no longer recognized. The air outside was crisp, the sunlight harsh on my eyes, and everything moved too fast. People were walking, talking, rushing, living their lives without realizing how fragile it all really is. And I had just been reminded, in the most brutal way, that it could all end in an instant if I wasn't careful. I remember standing at the hospital doors, looking at my car parked across the street, and realizing I had no idea how I was going to get back to the rhythm I'd been living before because I couldn't. I couldn't just go back to ignoring sleep, skipping meals, and working until my body forced me to stop again. I had to figure out a new way, or this was going to happen again. The first week home was terrifying. My apartment felt too quiet. My mind raced. Every notification on my phone felt like a siren. Every unfinished task felt like an emergency. I had to fight the urge to dive back in, to pick up where I left off. But I couldn't. Not yet. I had to relearn how to move slowly, how to breathe, how to feed myself real meals instead of whatever I could grab in 5 minutes. I started with sleep. I made a rule. 7 hours, minimum, no exceptions. No emails after 8 p.m., no phone before 8 a.m. The first night, it felt impossible. My brain screamed at me, "You're falling behind. You're losing control." But I closed my eyes anyway, and the next morning, something miraculous happened. I woke up and I could think clearly. My head wasn't buzzing. My heart wasn't racing. My limbs didn't feel like dead weights. Then I focused on nutrition. I began cooking again, simple meals, nothing fancy, but balanced. Vegetables, protein, whole grains. I realized that while I'd been surviving on caffeine and snacks, my brain and body were starving. Eating properly didn't just give me energy, it gave me mental clarity, emotional stability. Suddenly, I could process problems without panicking. I could make decisions without second-guessing myself every step of the way. Next came movement. Not intense workouts, just walking at first. 30 minutes in the morning, just outside, breathing, noticing the world. It became sacred time, time to transition from sleep to life, from rest to work. No screens, no distractions, just my body moving, my mind clearing. Over weeks, I gradually added more activity stretches, light strength exercises, cycling, hiking. I discovered something I hadn't realized. My body liked to move. It hadn't forgotten how to be strong. I had just been too busy to remember. Boundaries became the hardest part. Saying no to late-night calls. Saying no to projects that weren't urgent. Blocking chunks of time to focus on one thing at a time. I realized that for years, I had been rewarded for being constantly available, constantly on. But what I was really doing was teaching myself to ignore my own limits. Now, every time I set a boundary, I felt a small panic, like I was letting everyone down. But then I reminded myself, the people who rely on me are better served if I'm alive, awake, and healthy, not burnt out and sick. Relationships changed too. I started noticing the people around me in a way I hadn't in years. I listened without distraction. I laughed without thinking about the next task. I spent time with friends and family without checking my watch or my phone every minute. Those moments weren't just pleasant, they were life-giving. I realized I had been missing half of my own life while working all the time. The lessons came slowly, and they came harshly. I had relapses mornings when I skipped breakfast to check emails, evenings when I pushed past my bedtime for just one more thing. But every time I did, I felt my body whispering warnings, a tight chest, a racing pulse, a lightheaded dizziness. Those whispers became my guide. They reminded me that this wasn't punishment. It was feedback. It was my body saying, "I'm still here. Take care of me." I started journaling too, writing down what I felt, what I thought, what scared me. Putting words to the chaos in my mind made it manageable. Reading those entries later made me realize how much I had ignored myself, how many signs I had brushed aside as just stress. I learned to listen, really listen, and that listening became my new routine, not just to my body, but to my emotions, to my desires, to the world around me. Work didn't stop, life didn't pause. But the way I approached them changed completely. I became more focused, more intentional, less reactive, more deliberate. I realized I could accomplish more in 6 thoughtful hours than I ever did in 10 frantic ones. And I had more energy to enjoy it, more clarity, more joy. Now, months later, I can say I'm not just surviving, I'm thriving. I still have challenges, of course. There are still mornings when I feel the pull of old habits. There are still nights when the phone buzzes with urgent requests, tempting me to slip back into chaos. But I recognize the difference between urgency and importance, between doing everything and doing what actually matters. And that's the lesson I carry with me every day. Health isn't optional. It isn't a luxury. It's the foundation for everything else. Without it, work, relationships, goals, dreams, none of it matters. Because if your body and mind can't carry you through, you don't get to experience any of it. So I take care of myself now. I sleep, I eat, I move, I set boundaries, I listen, and I make time to be present for the people I care about. Every day, I remind myself that being busy is not a badge of honor. Being alive, being healthy, being capable of enjoying life, that's the real achievement. And I know this isn't a story about me. It's a story that could happen to anyone, to someone you know, to someone who thinks they're invincible, to someone who believes the rules of the human body don't apply to them. Take it seriously. Don't wait for a crisis to force you to change. Don't ignore the whispers of exhaustion, the pounding of your heart, the tightness in your chest. They're not warnings to push harder. They're signals to slow down, to listen, to act. Because once you learn to care for yourself, everything else, work, family, happiness, becomes possible in a way it never was before. And that, more than anything else, is worth living for.